Richard Johnson is a senior lecturer in U.S. politics at Queen Mary University in London. He's joining us from Oxford. Richard, thank you so much for sticking around with us. My understanding is we've eliminated those technical gremlins.
I hope so.
Yes, we did. Wonderful. So
Good to be
we're going to get
good.
into these possible challengers in a moment. But I'm curious if you could just bring our viewers up to speed around the world who are not perhaps familiar with these procedures in place in the UK. What needs to happen to trigger a leadership challenge against the current prime minister?
So the way that you trigger a leadership challenge in the British Labour Party is that a candidate needs to collect the nominations of 20% of the Labour MPs sitting in the House of Commons in good standing. So no one who's lost the whip for misbehaving. And to be eligible to stand for the leadership of the Labour Party, you must be a sitting Labour MP. And that's a really important detail because it takes out the person who is the most popular Labour politician in the country at the moment, which is the Mayor of Greater Manchester, Andy Burnham.
And where are we currently in that process?
Well, there's intense speculation that there are some senior Labour figures who are ready to announce their candidacies, and they will either already have sort of pre-collected their backers, so they may come out and say, I already have 20% of MPs supporting me, or they say, I'm standing, please support me, and in the coming days, I would like you to nominate me. At that point, the ruling body of the Labour Party, the sort of bureaucratic arm of it called the National Executive Committee, will lay out a timetable for candidates to formally collect signatures. And that could be over, 2 or 3 days, where MPs would literally go into a room in the House of Commons and fill out a piece of paper saying, this is the candidate that I nominate. And then at the end of that window, we'll see who has 20%. Keir Starmer, if he chooses to stand and fight for his job, does not need to collect the signatures, but I suggest that maybe he might want to collect the signatures anyway as a bit of a show of strength.
Hmm. What can you tell us about possible challengers? You know, there's so much speculation right now.
Well, the person on everyone's lips at the moment is Wes Streeting, who is the Health Secretary. Streeting is a younger MP. Well, he's in his 40s, and he was elected the same year as Keir Starmer in 2015. Streeting is someone in Labour terms, he's on the right of the Labour Party. Doesn't mean he's on the right of politics, but within the left, he's on the right, and he is going to, I think, be possibly the first one to come out. Others include the former Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner, who had to resign last year over her tax. But she announced very conveniently this morning that our version of the IRS, HMRC, have cleared her of any wrongdoing with her tax affairs. So now she's in the clear, and she's been quite popular with the sort of more left or soft left, as we sometimes say, grassroots in the Labour Party. So I think those two are the most prominent. There's also some speculation of former Labour leader Ed Miliband, who was leader of the opposition in the David Cameron years, may try and make a comeback. He's currently in the cabinet as Energy Secretary. But once you start having more than three, it gets quite difficult to get that 20% of nominations. So I wouldn't expect it to be many more than that. You may have a few people who declare their candidacy, but I doubt they'll reach the 20% threshold.
Richard, you've given us a lot to keep in mind as we wait for any potential developments in the hours or days ahead. Richard Johnson joining us from Oxford. Thank you.
Thank you.